Hello to all of you wonderful, hardworking moms out there. This is episode 32 of the Solve for Mom podcast, and it is the second installment of our Spring into Action series. I'm your host, Anoki Kapasi, and I am so excited you are tuning in to today's episode. Have you ever felt stuck with brilliant ideas that are just swirling in your head, and you just keep pushing them aside thinking there'll be time for that later? Are you tired of watching other moms seemingly do it all while your ideas are collecting dust? So today I'm going to share the secret that helped me transition from being that overwhelmed mom with an unfulfilled set of aspirations to someone who was consistently bringing ideas to life, all while being present for my family. This is going to be the perfect episode for you to spring into action because I'll not only share why it's so hard, even for us ambitious moms, to pursue our dreams, but also how to put your ideas into action using my simple method. I want you to listen closely today because your ideas, your happiness, and you are worthy of attention right now. So if you're ready to grow your ideas and turn them into reality, just like we would a small seed that has so much potential and watch it grow into a strong, hardy tree, then keep hanging out with me. You're really going to love this one. Welcome to the Solve for Mom podcast. Do you love spending family time together every day but realize that your own interests have fallen to the wayside? Do you have a long list of things you wish to learn but you're so tired from trying to balance it all on your own and frustrated from not planning ahead to make it happen? Have you been mom for so long that you've lost track of who you are as an individual? Hi, I'm Anoki. I'm a PhD biomedical researcher, homeschooling mom, and life coach. I too poured myself into being a mom and thought I had to stop doing the things that I love to do. I was struggling to make time for myself, had lost my sense of direction, and kept second-guessing myself. I wanted to take back control of my purpose and passions, but I kept telling myself there'll be plenty of time for that later. Until I did what was natural to me. Using the methods of a scientist, I created plans to prioritize my values, organize my time, and take action towards my goals. If you're ready to go questing for your purpose, level up your learning, and confidently pursue your passions while still being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this complex equation we call life, it's time to sharpen our pencils and our minds and solve for mom. Before we dive in, I want to remind you that the show is still relatively new and I can use all of the help that I can get to get my message out to other moms with beautiful ideas and goals that they are just yearning to make come to life. When you write a review for the show, which only takes a minute, or share the show with your friends, it helps to increase the show's reach to more moms like you. So here's a review from Ronnie. I'm gaining a lot of encouragement from this podcast, as well as many useful tips. I appreciate the memorable terminology she shares. It helps remind me of the ideas in the moment. Anoki is relatable and warm. Well, thank you, Ronnie, for taking the time to share your feedback. You're going to like today's episode where I share my tips on how to take action on your big ideas. Well, on that note, let's get back to the show. Before becoming a mom, I was a powerhouse at work. I was the go-to person that made things happen with this unwavering dedication and quality to my work. I was known for my efficiency. Like many high-achieving professionals, I approached motherhood with that same strategic mindset. Well, when my baby arrived, of course, I was overwhelmed with joy and I had so many precious moments and it was delightful. And I still value all of that. But beneath the surface, I did feel like my ambitious spirit was dimming. I could still feel my potential, but my ideas were staying simply as what ifs. And instead of conquering my postpartum fitness goals or following through on my grand plans to travel with a baby in tow, I found myself drowning in my daily demands of cloth diapering and mundane routines. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Are you putting your dreams on hold? Are you boxing up those brilliant ideas and shoving them into a closet? And I bet at work, you're still an unstoppable force of nature. Maybe it changed a little, but I bet you're still really effective. And that's because whether you're motivated or not, at the end of the day, deadlines will require you to get things done. But when it comes to our personal aspirations, without deadlines, they often take a backseat. They just don't seem as urgent. Now, there's all kinds of things that might hold us back. Maybe we don't want to feel foolish doing something in such a raw way in front of others, like having our kids see us be bad at something. Maybe we're perfectionist or we have a fear of failure. And quite possibly, overwhelm and tiredness are a very real part of our lives, and pursuing a big idea just feels like we're adding more to our already busy lives. And I did say busy because that is not the same thing as having a full life. Here's what I know now. Taking action on our goals and ideas is absolutely crucial to us as moms. As ambitious women, our sense of purpose is deeply intertwined with making progress in our goals. So when we ignore that core part of ourselves, we're not just pausing our dreams, we're actually dimming our light. And the harsh truth, if we don't take bold action now, our aspirations will forever remain in that graveyard of someday. And that is just something we might regret for the rest of our lives. So I don't want to seem too dramatic, but if you do know that you're guilty of letting your ideas pile up, then let's not let them fade into the oblivion with this false notion that this, that, or the other is more important than your own dreams. Keep listening to this episode and start taking notes because I'm giving you a super tactical way to start taking actions on your ideas now. And you're going to be surprised at how simple some of this is too. So the first thing is to understand what your implementation style is. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably are the type of person who has ideas all the time. Your gears are always turning. It's just the nature of being academically minded and having had success in your life, probably before becoming a mother. What are you going to do with these ideas? They're just piling up, and there's so many different reasons why you might be having difficulty taking action on them. Well, one of these things could be the type of person you are when it comes to implementing ideas. And so there are 3 specific implementation styles that I've found to be a little problematic sometimes. All 3 styles have their pros and cons to them. And so what I want you to do is to think about whether any one of these styles might be describing you and to be aware of what some of the downsides of that style is and how you might overcome it, as well as knowing what the strengths are and then trying to lean and play into those strengths as well. So one implementation style is the quick starter. Now, this is the type of person who thrives on momentum. They are just so eager and enthusiastic, and once the idea comes to mind, they just want to set off and take action right away. But the problem is that they might not actually put a lot of planning into it, so they're acting without having a good plan in place. And often, because of poor planning or no planning at all, they find it really hard to bring the project or idea or whatever they've started to act on over the finish line. Often, they're the type of people who need to work in a group because they're the ones who are total firecrackers and can get things going, which is great for a big group because there can often be a lot of inertia in that. But then they need the support of the rest of the group to keep things going as things might fade out. Another kind of implementation style is the researcher type. Now, based off of the name, you can probably tell that they're really good and masterful at gathering information. They're the type of person who devours every article and book or podcast video, and they really like to go deep into topics. That is great because it creates a really strong foundation of knowledge for any time you're working on a project or have an idea. They can really research the heck out of things. The key is that when it's time to shift from planning and researching into action, they often just kind of get stuck in the information gathering phase. And then the third type I wanted to bring up was the perfectionist. You probably have some sense of what this is. It's the person who is very valuable at analytical skills and they have a strong attention for detail. And again, they do great in the planning phase. And their thorough approach can really create solid strategies. The problem is in progressing through to actions because they get stuck in this endless cycle of refinements and their plan is never perfect enough for them to actually take action on. Given that I'm talking to a group of you ambitious women, I think many of us can relate to that perfectionist mindset. But the truth is that being a high-achieving mom means making progress. It's not about seeking perfection. So our past successes have actually come from combining smart planning with determined and decisive action. Now, I want to ask you, which style resonates with you? Do you see yourself as being one or more than one of these types? Like, for example, I'm a researcher type with a little bit of perfectionist tendencies. Okay, maybe a lot. Does that pattern feel familiar to you? Let's talk about how you can bring your ideas back to life now. I'm going to talk about the take action cycle. I've talked about this in the episodes about home projects. Those are episodes 3 and 4. I'm linking them in the show notes. That was in relation to projects. But what I've also found is that the take action cycle works amazing for ideas and dreams and goals and all kinds of things. So I want to bring that idea back and show you how you can now use it to turn your aspirations into reality. The take action cycle consists of 5 steps. The first 4 are specific actions to take, and then the 5th step is basically a repeat step. So we start off with the first step, which is a short, modest initial burst of planning and research. What you're doing is information gathering. It can be passive consumption of information, but you're just doing just enough to get things started. I like to think of this step as having two goals. The first is a feasibility assessment. So a feasibility assessment is essentially making sure that, in theory, this idea could actually be executed. So what you want to do is to think about the logistics in your life, the realities of your life, and make sure that whatever the criteria are for this idea in order to make it happen are actually available and an option in your life. And then the second goal, of course, is to make sure that you've done enough information gathering to get the first start. So this step is actually perfect for helping all three of those implementation styles move forward. It's going to help the researcher because they're not going to get stuck in this endless cycle of research. The feasibility assessment is going to help the perfectionist who might be anxious about the plan being just so in order to move on. Well, by doing a feasibility assessment, you can address this worry by saying, hey, this idea is possible to do, and these are the requirements, and all the requirements are met in my life. And of course, this step is also going to help the quick starter type because they want to get going, but they haven't done any planning. Well, this is a great way to get somebody who's impatient like the quick starter, get a little bit of planning in so that their actions have a little more intentionality in them. Step 2 of the take action cycle is to determine what are the next 3 things that need to happen. It's a way of prioritizing. It would be even better if you didn't just identify the first 3, but to then, within those first 3, figure out which one should happen first, second, and third. Sometimes you can do more than one step at a time. And again, this really helps the perfectionist type because when you have a big idea and it's so overwhelming and you think you have to have all the things figured out even before you start taking action, it is overwhelming and you will get stuck as a perfectionist. But when you're just saying, hey, I just have to do the first 3 steps really well, and these are those steps, and I know how I'm going to do it now because I've done enough research on it, then it's much easier for somebody who's the perfectionist type to start moving forward. I'd also like to point out that this step helps the other 2 types as well. If you're a researcher type and you are likely to get stuck in the information gathering stage and you're not really thinking ahead as to what action I should take next. And so this step very purposefully makes you think about that. And then as a quick starter, again, being impatient and wanting to take action, well, now you're starting to feel satisfied. Okay, here's what I'm going to do first. I get to take that action soon. Step 3 is to address the low-hanging fruit. Basically, what are you going to do or practice or decide on very early? Just get that out of the way. You really want to get here as soon as possible because once you start taking that first step and you start seeing some progress, all 3 implementation styles are going to benefit from this. They're going to gain confidence. They've already put some effort in and they have a vested interest at this point to now see their idea through to the end. So obviously this is going to help the perfectionist because taking action basically obliterates perfectionism because now you had to do it regardless of whether you think it's perfect or not. And also by it being a low-hanging fruit, it might be an easier step. And so you might actually have more satisfaction in the way that you've executed on it. But no matter what, whether you're working on a project, an idea, or working out a decision, the more action you take, the clearer your goals and outcome are going to be. There will be refinement, and you're going to see how the Take Action plan actually factors that in. So now we're at step 4 of the Take Action cycle, and what you want to do here is to figure out what else it is that you need to learn or research in order to basically fill in the gaps or move on to the next step. If there are any lingering decisions to be made, this is probably the time to start going back and researching and gathering more information. Or if you've done something and you know that you have to keep doing it, and you might want to level up, like maybe you feel that you need to shore up some skill in order to continue and do it at a level that you feel is more appropriate. And often at this point, you might be working on more than one step at a time. So you could be gathering information on one step while you're actually executing on another step. And so this is actually going to help that quick starter type because you're getting more information without actually stopping or getting stuck on other actions. Overall, the goal of this step is to fill in any gaps that you have in your idea, either planning-wise or taking action-wise. And the 5th step is basically to cycle through these 4 steps, steps 1 to 4, until your idea is fully implemented. This is a cycle. That's why I call it the Take Action cycle. Each round of the Take Action cycle creates more and more momentum. each step from step 1 to 2, 2 to 3, you're also gaining momentum. So I like to think of it like when you're riding a bike, right? That first revolution of the wheel, you're pushing really hard on the pedal. But as you pedal more and you start moving, it starts to feel a bit easier. So we've talked about understanding your implementation style, and now we've talked about how to take action, how to plan, and then figure out what steps to do, and then move forward and execute on those steps. But sometimes you have ideas and there are other reasons, not necessarily your implementation style, that is stopping you from taking action. We all know that one of the realities of our big, messy lives is that we're often dealing with a lot of responsibilities, and so we're so overwhelmed and we constantly feel like there's never enough time. So I'm going to offer up some other tips as well that might address some of the other barriers that you might be facing when you're trying to follow through on these ideas of yours. The first tip I'd like to say is to start with life planning. Here's the thing. I already know that if you had an extra 1 to 2 hours every day, you are unlikely to still pursue your big, hairy, audacious goal. I've seen it in many moms, including myself, that they fill in their free time with other forms of busyness. It's partially because of not having planned, using the take action cycle. And so some of that will be overcome when you follow the take action cycle. But it's also because you might not have the clarity as to what your priorities are in your life. What is your long-term vision and which big ideas are important for you to pursue? Because you might have a long list of ideas and not every one is probably going to be something that you can, in all practicality, pursue or even should be pursued. You want to pursue the ones that are in line with your values, in line with your purpose and mission and things like that. That is what life planning will do. With your life plan, you will have a reference point and a decision-making filter for deciding which ideas should be followed up on and which ones can just hang out there for a while. So this next tip is sort of related to what I was just talking about with life planning, because if we have a long list of all these ideas and our dreams are all over the place, we can't possibly work on all of them at once. So pick one. If you're overwhelmed, just pick one. That way you have something very specific to focus on. Immediately you're going to feel the overwhelm sort of melt away because you have clarity in having made that decision. When you pick one idea though, that doesn't mean you're abandoning all your other dreams. It's really about giving one idea the fair attention that it deserves to succeed. You can always go back to other ideas or make them a part of your first idea that you pursue. If you want any level of success, it's probably a better idea to focus on the one big, audacious goal of yours. If you want some help in determining how to know which idea to select first, then try the following criteria. You might want to prioritize based on external deadlines. If, for example, one of your ideas involves an event or attending something that only happens once or infrequently, it happens at a specified time, well, if that time is approaching, then maybe that's something you want to pursue first. You can also try going for ideas that essentially are low-hanging fruit, ideas that you think are easier to implement. Another way to prioritize is to select the one that you are looking forward to the most. You're likely to follow through on that one more because you have such a high level of interest and motivation to pursue that idea. And then, is there an idea that hits more than one of your goals during the follow-through? That might be nice to know because you would be making progress on multiple goals while you're pursuing one idea. Another tip for taking action on your ideas is to chop it up. When you have this big, hairy, audacious goal, it is going to feel overwhelming. And as I often explain for pretty much any problem that I try to solve, not that your idea is a problem, but when it is something that you need to work on and figure things out for, then it helps to break things up, to chop it up. Can you take this big idea and break it down into smaller ideas? Just like I would take a big long-term goal like your vision and then break it down intermediate goals that you can pursue sequentially in order to reach your vision. Sometimes, even before you start the research phase, it can help to actually just start organizing your resources and support. It's a very easy and gentle way to enter from the idea phase into, hey, I might actually go through with this. You want to identify what you need and who can help you. So the what you need are resources like books and videos, podcasts, articles for information gathering, as well as equipment and tools that you need for doing the thing. Maybe you need training to learn a new skill. And then people can be both a resource and a form of support. And I just want to remind you that asking for support isn't a sign of weakness. I hope you all know that, right? It's actually a very strategic way of working on your ideas. Another tip for taking action is to actually plan in action blocks. You want to break down your implementation into tiny, manageable chunks. You fit them into your schedule based on your availability. So, for example, I had this vision for my garden before it actually got developed. And I knew that I wanted it to be a source of fresh foods for my family, especially in the summer. And I wanted it to be in a very responsible manner. So I was going to use organic practices. I wanted it to be low waste. So I'm using composting to use materials back into my garden. I have water conservation methods in place so that I'm using little to no water actually. I almost exclusively rely on rainwater except for certain phases. And I want there to be available plant and foliage for our native species. So I'm using a lot of native plants as well as foodscaping. So I'm planting my vegetables and fruits throughout my front landscaping where I keep my ornamentals and things like that as well. So this seems like a very big idea and a very big task. That entire vision has come to fruition. And how I've done that has almost exclusively been in 30-minute batches of my time. When I spend longer time out there, it's not because I'm actually having to do a lot of work. It's actually because I have the time. And for me, my garden is a place of solace and peace. So I just like hanging out there sometimes. I just sit and drink coffee or whatever, enjoy the view. How did I do this in such short blocks of time? Well, I keep it very simple and systematic. I sow one plant type at a time. Or I do one task at each visit out in the garden, like adding minerals to my garden beds or repotting 1 or 2 plants. I keep it super simple, but I make progress every day. And the last tip is to have an implementation-friendly environment. You want to set up your physical space, your digital workspace in a way where you can execute your ideas much more easily. Having SOPs in place, workflows in place, having the area decluttered so that you can move around and find things very easily. Also, as part of this environmental setup, you want to establish boundaries so that you can protect your time, your space, and your energy for you to implement your ideas. And then another last part of the environment setup is to make sure you have a support system in place so that the people around you understand what your vision is and they can either participate and fuel your efforts, or they can at least respect your boundaries that you've put into place. Okay, it's time to wrap up. So as high achievers and as moms, we have to be strategic with our energy, and we want to take consistent and purposeful action so that we are taking action on our ideas and making progress. I talked about first figuring out if your implementation style includes one of the 3 that I mentioned, being a quick starter, a researcher, or a perfectionist. I want you to know what you can do to overcome some of the tricky elements that these 3 types face, as well as leaning into the strengths of them. Use the take action cycle to plan, start, and create momentum through to the finish line of your ideas. And I also shared a ton of other tips, such as life planning, selecting one idea at a time. I offered many different ways to prioritize your ideas, and then to take your ideas, especially if they're very big and complex, and chopping them up. I talked about creating time blocks for taking action and organizing your resources and finding support, as well as setting up an implementation environment. Now, I didn't talk about planning, such as how to do the research or set up timelines or define outcomes, tracking your progress, or even setting up redundancies, which I love to do. However, if you want help with this entire process, with the planning, learning how to take action, and using all of the strategies that came out of this episode, then I want you to consider my one-on-one coaching program. When you are coaching with me, I'm going to share with you all of those different high-performance strategies that I use at work and how I have converted them successfully into my personal life and how you can do the same. And this is really what I've become known for at work. Just give it to Anoki, she's going to get it done. And if you want to be that mom who's able to get things done, especially when it comes to something as important as your big dreams and aspirations, then I'd like to invite you to work with me one-on-one. And you can do that by clicking the link below for my coaching program. So my goal for you in this episode is to take your ideas and move them from your someday list to your to-do or your priorities list. When you make that small, consistent action today, you are going to start to see a breakthrough moment tomorrow. So are you ready to stop postponing your dreams? You go, girl. I'm going to see you next week, and I hope to hear from you about how things are progressing for you. I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe and tell other ambitious mamas about it. Who knows, you might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. Thank you for making my show a part of your day. I'll see you next week for another episode of the Solve for Mom podcast with Anoki Kapasi.